Happy Tuesday, Miami Dolphins fans. Welcome into Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, where we are live before NFL Week 15. The Miami Dolphins coming off of an overtime win against the New York Jets to improve their record to 6-7 and keep their playoff chances alive thanks to an awesome overtime drive from Tua Tagovailoa, Jonnu Smith, and company. And on today's show, we'll go through some news and rumors, playoff chances before Week 15, Tua Tagovailoa and why he deserves more respect from Miami Dolphins fans. And then we'll also get into why the Dolphins may be in trouble against the Houston Texans this Sunday in this big-time matchup against Houston. But before we get into that, shout out your city for me down in the comment section. Where are the real ones watching from? I want to know where everyone's tuning in from on this fine Tuesday afternoon. We got some real ones in the chat already, like Kristen Reinhart, Madden Guy, Ty Man the Buckeye, watching from Ohio. Lardism is in Atlanta. Let me know where all the real ones are located on this fine Tuesday. Mr. Void's in Beckley, West Virginia. Axie's in the building saying greetings. Howdy, what's up? Madden Guy is watching from Miami. We are located in Dallas, Texas. And with that being said, it's a good time to introduce today's producer. It is not Cullen Brown. It is actually the man, the myth, the legend, Jack Lotteray, rocking his Fins hat today. Jack, how we doing?
We're doing well. Cullen had to step into another producer role today, so they said, Jack, we know the Dolphins fans love you. We're calling to the bullpen.
Well, you were here on Sunday for that win against the Jets. You will also be here for this upcoming Sunday against the Houston Texans as well. So hopefully Jack continues to bring the good luck to the Dolphins Today streams, and hopefully is going to help us get another win and move to 7-7. Would be the first time Miami is 500 or better since week 2. Think about that, Jack, when they were 1-1 after losing to the Buffalo Bills, trying to finally get back to 7-7 with a win this week. We got Merrill watching from Arizona, I believe. C-A-Z. I believe the C was a mistype and it's Arizona. We got Timothy is in Iowa. We got Tristan in Missouri. Nice of Kristen and Ty Man to say what's up to Jack Lotteray. All right, before we get into more on our build-up portion of today's show, I do want to ask. Let's do the game time. Let's do game time. We're going to tell you about Game Time, as Ashley Duffy is in Smithfield, Rhode Island. But Game Time is the best ticketing app out there, and it's the only way I get my tickets. Whether I'm going to a comedy show, concert, live sporting event, it really does not matter. I buy my tickets with Game Time, and I'm going to tell you, you need to as well. They've got so many great features, one of them being Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy as well. All-in pricing is another great feature. It shows you total price of ticket up front rather than getting blindsided by fees at checkout. Make sure you download Game Time today and use code CHATSPORTS when creating an account to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. First purchase only. But one more time, code CHATSPORTS. That'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to Game Time. What time is it? It is game time. All right, with the Dolphins record sitting at 6-7 with 4 games remaining, games against Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland, and New York on the table, what is the percent chance the Dolphins make the NFL playoffs? Coming into last week, it was 10%. If they won out and won all 5 games, it jumps to 87%. Now, nothing really changed for the Dolphins, and so it's still going to be about 87% chance if they win out. They currently do have a 15% chance, so that went up about 5%. But let me know your percent chance the Miami Dolphins make the playoffs. They got to go 4-0. Then they have to get some help. Either the Broncos have to go 2-2, the Chargers have to go 2-2. Either way you slice it, one of those teams that are 8-5 and are in the wild card, whether it's the Baltimore Ravens, whether it's the Chargers, whether it's the Broncos. Those three teams are all 8-5 and all right in the mix for the postseason. One of those teams has to go 2-2 down the stretch. The Broncos or Chargers, the more likely teams to go down the stretch, because the Ravens' record or schedule is relatively easy, having a game against the Giants and the Browns in the final 4 games. So if they just win those 2 games, well, they'll probably split the other 2, but let me know your percent chance. I'm at about a 24% chance. I'm at a 24%. Ashley Duffy says 79%. Man Guy says Miami is going to win this week. I like the confidence playing in Houston against the Texans, who are 8-5 themselves. But I don't really think the Texans are that scary of a team, if I'm going to be honest. The Texans have struggled this season. C.J. Stroud is having a sophomore slump, if you will. No Stephon Diggs due to injury. Their defense has been pretty solid for the most part, but their offense has been very hit and miss. A really bad offensive line in Houston. I think there's a good chance that the Dolphins can go into Houston and get a win this week. They are 3-point underdogs, which means on a neutral field site, it would be even. That's how sports books look at the games. Anytime there's a 3-point bump, depending on if you are home and away. Elizabeth says Big Island of Hawaii. That must be where Elizabeth is watching from. All right, I guess no one wants to tell me the percent chance they believe the Miami Dolphins are going to make the playoffs. Shout out to Ashley Duffy, 79%. So we'll move on to the next question here on today's show. Do you believe Tua Tagovailoa is the QB of the future for the Miami Dolphins? Type Y for yes or type N for no. It is also today's pinned comment. You see it there on the live poll. 83% so far say he is the quarterback of the future. Do the people in the live chat believe the same, or is it just people typing those yeses in that poll? Kristen Reinhardt says yes. Rolly's Neckbeard says hell no. Rolly's Neckbeard, a stalker of yours truly, but it is what it is. We'll talk about Tua in our second segment, and more in depth on his statistics, some advanced analytics as well. But man, I'm telling you right now, the way he's played, it's been impressive. It's been impressive. Yeah. I just had to read a little bit of that to understand what was going on. Sorry, got a message. Yeah, ignore. No. It's tough to ignore. Tough to ignore. The boss sends a Slack. You always got to get eyes on it, even if it says ignore while live. I had to know it wasn't something urgent, but I completely understand here. All right, so we got Jerry saying nope, Ashley saying yes. So a little split here. Certainly not as convincing as the live poll, 80% saying yes. There are 75 people watching. Can we get to 35 likes to start the show? Axie saying yes, so is Jaime or Jamie. I don't know how that works. But I always say Jaime because of Jaime Jaquez Jr. Whenever I see a name like that, it's probably Jamie. But can we get to 35 likes? That's just about halfway. We're at 21 right now, so that would take 14 or 15 likes to get there. When we get to that mark, that is when we will start our actual show and start our segments. We have 3 segments to talk about today. Kendall Fuller called out the defense, as well as playoff chances. Tua Tagovailoa deserves respect. In Houston, we have a problem on Miami's side of it. But we can't start the game or in stream until we get to 35 likes. We're at 72 viewers, 26 likes, so 9 likes away from getting into the show. Hit that thumbs up icon. Live twice a week on Tuesdays and game days. Content every day in between. Hit that thumbs up icon. Come on.
I feel like they're doing a disservice if they don't like, because you're here, so obviously you want to watch the content.
Well, I'll say this, Jack, is like we bust our ass every day to get the Dolphins fans at least 7 or 8 videos a week, 2 live shows. Like, it's nice to be getting some gratitude on the live shows by just hitting the like button. Like, it takes 1 second. It's free. We're not asking you to super chat. We will ask you to super chat, and it helps us grow quicker than anything. But I mean, it's just so easy and so free to hit the like button.
Are you the one that has the shoe metaphor?
Yeah.
Where it's like when you go to someone's house.
I have used that.
Yeah. I think that's appropriate. If you come to our live, the least you can do is hit a like.
I mean, it feels like the right thing to do. 2 likes away, 1 like away. Who's going to be that person to get us to 35 likes so we can start today's live show? Little spike in the audience, up to 80 people watching. Let's showcase the people what we have coming up on live one more time. Some Dolphins news. Kendall Fuller actually called out the Dolphins secondary and defense. Plus, we'll talk about the playoff percent chance for the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa deserves respect. And then Houston, we have a problem for this game. And it is time to get into the first segment of the day. Let's do it. Dolphins news and playoff percent chances going into Week 15. Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, and on today's show, we have 2 things to talk about. Kendall Fuller, the cornerback, sounds off on this Miami Dolphins defense and what needs to improve. Plus, Miami Dolphins playoff chances heading into Week 15. 4 weeks remain, 4 games remain for every team in the NFL. How do things stack up for the Miami Dolphins? But before we get into that, help us out by sharing today's video. One way to do it is posting it onto Twitter or X by clicking that share button, select Twitter/X, and then click post to Twitter/X. It helps us grow this channel. We want to continue to grow and spread our information to more Dolphins fans, create the largest community possible of Dolphins fans on YouTube. So help us out by sharing today's video. All right, let's get into Kendall Fuller and what he did say. He talked about how it was disappointing after the game on Sunday against the Jets, saying Kader has been in the league 3 years. Me and Jalen both 9 years. There's days where you look at the film and you're like, dang, we could have been better. You don't necessarily reconcile it. When you leave the game, you know you could have done better. And when he uses the words, we got to be better, you could have done better, well, he's not wrong on that assessment whatsoever. I thought the secondary played one of its worst games of the season against the New York Jets. Listen, Aaron Rodgers did not have a 300-yard passing game this season until he played the Dolphins this past week. He went off. He looked like vintage Packers Aaron Rodgers instead of this old washed-up Jets version. And when you look at the numbers, it was a rough day for these 3 men. By PFF standards, they all had a sub-55 and below coverage grade. You see the targets to receptions. Kader was perfect in terms of getting targeted. He allowed the lone touchdown through the air out of these 3 guys. Kendall Fuller, 7 receptions. Jalen Ramsey, 6 receptions. You see your top corner, Jalen Ramsey, he gave up 146 yards. The moral of the story is when you look at the 3 corners and probably at least presumed to be one of your strongest points of the team in your Dolphins secondary, getting torched the way they did against the team that was coming into this game, one of the worst passing attacks in all of football, it's concerning. And I know they have got really good wide receivers in Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, but that offensive line has not been good this year. Aaron Rodgers has not been good this year. To give up the passing yardage they did just kind of tells me the cornerback room either underperformed or Anthony Weaver did not have a good game plan installed. And I want to take this a step further and showcase how ugly it really was for this Dolphins secondary, specifically attempting to defend Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson. And I looked at their numbers when going up against the top 3 guys. Davante Adams had 34 yards against Ramsey, 33 against Fuller, 19 against including the 1 touchdown and a little slot bubble screen. But Garrett Wilson had his way with Jalen Ramsey. And we just showed it a second ago. Ramsey was actually the one who gave the most yards out of any of the top 3 corners. It was a down game for Jalen, specifically trying to defend the young, talented man out of Ohio State, Garrett Wilson, because he took the old veteran to school, having 97 yards on 4 receptions. Fuller and Kohou did a decent job on Wilson, but Ramsey, who was lined up with him most of the game, cooked Jalen Ramsey. That's something you do not want to see. It's concerning. Now, am I going to come up here and say that Jalen Ramsey is washed, he's cooked, he's no good? Absolutely not. I think Jalen Ramsey is still having an unbelievable season and is a top 5, top 10 corner in the National Football League. Just a down game for him, and hopefully a rebound because it will be necessary for them to have a good game against the Texans this upcoming Sunday. But after seeing the statistics and watching the game on Sunday against the New York Jets, are you concerned about the Dolphins cornerback room? Type C if you are concerned, type F if you are fine. Let's get into more what Kendall Fuller had to say, because he says it always feels good to correct things and know you need to get things fixed after a win. I mean, after the game, we just know different things that we've got to work on. Get better to be better for the next Sunday. And like I mentioned, you have to be better this upcoming Sunday because you are facing one of the most explosive wide receivers in the National Football League in Nico Collins. He has been flat out unstoppable ever since C.J. Stroud became the quarterback one of the Houston Texans. He's only played in 8 games this year. He's missed a couple games with injury, but he is still putting up what looks to be another dominant 1,000-yard season. He had double-digit touchdowns last year, 1,000 yards last year. We saw him dominate in the 2 postseason games he played at as well, and he's on pace to become a top 7 wide receiver in the National Football League with his numbers this year, averaging 17 yards per catch, averaging 104 yards per game. Nico Collins is a focal point of this Texans offense, and you must stop him. I'm talking with our host of the Texans channel here, Jeremy Chuggs, and I was talking about, like, hey, I know the Texans offense has struggled this year. C.J. Stroud's been a little bit down, but why is the Texans offense kind of struggling a little bit? What is the key to make them struggle? And he told me straight up, it was like, Joe Mixon's having a terrific year, but if you stop Nico Collins, you will stop the Houston Texans passing game, especially with Stephon Diggs out for the year. Tank Dell has been up and down. If you are able to limit Nico Collins, this passing game of Las Vegas is not going to be good. And we mentioned Stroud. He's having a sophomore slump. In 2023, he looked like a top 5, top 7 quarterback in all of football, having a completion percentage of 64% basically, 4,100 yards, and we saw him ball out in the postseason against the Cleveland Browns and go toe-to-toe with Mahomes in Kansas City as well. So I am definitely intrigued to see why Stroud has had a different season this year and not as productive. But to me, Nico Collins is the focal point of this Texans offense, and if you're able to slow him down, sure, Joe Mixon might get 100, 120 rushing yards on the ground, but as long as they don't give up the big run and make that 120, 115 come on 25, 30 carries, like that will be manageable for me. Just don't give up the 20-yard completions that Nico Collins is damn near averaging, 17 yards a catch. All right, we got more to discuss here in just a second, but we are sponsored by Game Time, the #1 ticketing app out there, and it's the only one that I use and Chat Sports uses to get their tickets, whether it's a sporting event, comedy show, concert, it does not matter. I went to NLCS games 4 and 5, Dodgers Mets. I went to Week 1 college football, LSU USC. I went to some Mavericks games around the Dallas area. I use Game Time because they have got great features like Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I'm all about easy. I want simple, and they make it simple. Scrolling through the app, seeing the views from your seat in the app before you buy, and they also make it easy just to purchase, whether you could do Apple Pay, quick, easy Venmo payments as well. There's so many different ways to make it easy for you, which, like I said, I like quite a bit. So make sure you download Game Time and use promo code CHATSPORTS when signing up and creating an account, because that will get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, first purchase only, but download Game Time and input code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to Game Time for sponsoring today's show. What time is it? It is game time. Going into this Week 15 game against Houston, there's a big opportunity for the Dolphins defense to get back on the right track after what I would consider 2 bad games in a row against the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay on Thanksgiving and then against the New York Jets this past Sunday. They had a good game prior against the New England Patriots, but bad 2-game stretch here. Time to turn it around, because the Dolphins defense for the most part this season has been pretty good, and they were really good in the middle of the season when the Dolphins offense was ironically dog shit with Tyler Huntley, Skylar Thompson running things. The Dolphins defense was phenomenal, limiting the Patriots, limiting the Colts, playing pretty well against the Titans and Seahawks for the most part. They were just on the field nonstop because the offense couldn't sustain a drive. Like their 4th and 3rd down percentage in terms of getting teams off the football field, 9th in opposing yards per game allowed, 12th and 14th in rushing yards and passing yards allowed. So they're top half and top 10 in some pretty key statistics. The one statistic that is holding them back is their inability to get after the quarterback. Their sack percentage this year is 5.38%. That's 29th in the National Football League, and they're in the bottom 3 of total sacks this season as well. It's been something that has held this defense back. Now, could Bradley Chubb come back this week? That is something that's potentially going to help this Dolphins defense get after the quarterback more. The Texans' offensive line is their weakest point of their ball club, so maybe you can get after Stroud a little bit more this week, but boy, this Dolphins defense has a chance to right the ship in a meaningful 4-game stretch here where they play Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland, and New York again. All right, speaking of that 4-game schedule, let's transfer over to the playoff chances Miami has with 4 games left on the schedule because, well, the playoff chances for Miami is not that good right now. ESPN has them at 15%, The Athletic has it at 15%, and the New York Times with a generous 16%. So either way, let's just call it 15.3% chance to make the postseason, and they clearly have to win out. We've talked about this a lot. We said it before the game this past Sunday. When we said it actually before the Packers game, the final 6 games of the year, you needed to go 5-1 in the final 6 in order to make the postseason. 10-7 was always the benchmark. Well, you're 6-7 with 4 games remaining. So can you win these 4 games? You're going to be underdogs this week. If you win this week, you will be favored against the 49ers. You'll be favored against the Browns and favored against the Jets. So if you're able to get the road win against Houston, you will technically be favored by Vegas to win the final 3 games and make the postseason by getting the 10-7. But in order to make the postseason, you do need some help. And the help that you're likely going to need is the Broncos and Chargers here. Now, you can include the Ravens into this list because they are also 8-5 and go 2-2 down the stretch, but they play a team like Cleveland, they play a team like New York, they play the Steelers, they play the Texans, likely going to go 3-1 in that stretch, which get them to 11 wins, and well, that puts the Dolphins out of contention to chase them. But if either Denver or Los Angeles goes 2-2 in their final 4 games, well, that would have the same record as Miami, assuming they're winning out. And you see their schedules on screen. The Broncos have a pretty tough schedule, playing the Colts, who are ahead of the Dolphins in the standings. The Chargers have to play the Buccaneers, Broncos, 2 easy games to end it. But the Broncos schedule is very difficult. And that Week 16 game is going to be very, very important. But this week is arguably more important. Why do I say that? Because, well, the Dolphins need the Colts to lose one of their final 4 games as well. And here's the thing. They play Denver. If Denver and the Chargers win this week, they would both be 9-5 with 3 games remaining, meaning that the Dolphins, if they win out, need to have one of them go 1-2. Well, luckily, one of them is going to lose in Week 16 because they play each other, and then you'd have to have they go 1-1 in the final 2 games. So it all is dependent on what happens this week, with the Chargers hosting the Bucs and the Broncos playing the Colts. If both of them win, it's probably advantageous to root for the Chargers to beat the Broncos in Week 16 because that would mean the Broncos would have to just lose one of the final 2 games against Kansas City and Cincinnati, which is much more plausible than the Chargers going 1-1 down the stretch against the Patriots and the Raiders. So to me, you're likely going to have to root for the Chargers to beat the Broncos in Week 16, regardless of what happens this week. But if the Buccaneers do beat the Chargers this week, then you just need the Broncos to beat the Chargers in Week 16, and then they'll be at 7 losses, and you will have a chance to make the postseason regardless of what Los Angeles does. So this is a very important week as well as next week for the Dolphins. They need to win, obviously, first, but when you're scoreboard watching, you got to be rooting against the Broncos and Chargers pretty heavily. And we showed the percentages, but let me know, what % chance the Dolphins make the playoffs in your opinion? Get down in the comment section and drop a number, scale 1 to 100. I'm at a 24%. I don't think it's that high. I think 24% actually might be pretty reasonable. We talked about it. If the Dolphins win out, it's an 87% chance. New York Times, Athletic, all of them have a 15% chance. I'd give it a little bit of a higher chance because I think Miami is going to win this week against Houston because I don't think the Texans are a good ball club, and I think they're actually going to win out. I am predicting the Dolphins to go 10-7. The question is, and the reason why I have it at a lower percentage is because, one, it's unlikely that they actually do it, even though I'm predicting it, but I also just find it hard to believe the Dolphins are going to get the help they require and need from the Broncos, from the Chargers. Those are some good teams playing good football right now. And even though the Broncos have a difficult schedule, I think it's going to be more difficult for the Dolphins to make the postseason. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. Make sure you are subscribed. I'm Nic Rohloff. I'm putting out daily content for the Dolphins. We'll be live on Sunday for Dolphins-Texans big-time game that could end the season for Miami, could propel it into another week, and we'll have you covered leading up to that game as well, so make sure you are subscribed. All right, that will do it for segment number 1. Let me see what the people believe in the chat. Percent chance you think the Dolphins end up making the postseason. 125 people watching. I see Justin saying 25%. I see 46% from Ashley Duffy. Let me know your thoughts, guys. I want to see what you guys have to say. Interesting. Dynamic Duo Sports says 38%. I wonder if the Sox miss out on Freed, if they just pivot in hardcore to a crochet trade. Well, crochet might be off the market by the time all that stuff happens. I think crochet. Yeah, they could have Brett Beatty and Luis Angel Acuna. Jeremy says 10%. Matt says 20%. Troy says 25%. Dynamics is 38%. So most of you guys are in the same realm as me. I think that's reasonable. Like, I'm not going to say. I'll say this, though, folks. I really will. I think if the Dolphins win this week in Houston and one of the Broncos or Chargers lose, just one of them, and that's something that could happen. I mean, Colts maybe sneaking in a win, which – honestly, I think it's better to root for Denver this week. I will be honest, because yes, I know you are trying to chase them, but the Colts are 6-7. You need them to lose a game because they have the tiebreaker over you with the head-to-head win. Dude, their last 3 games are against the Titans, Giants, and Jaguars. So I kind of think the Colts are going to win 3 of those last 3 games. I think they're going 3-0 in the final 3 games. So if they beat Denver, it's not good, Jim. Not good. Not good. So I think it's actually more advantageous, if you're scoreboard watching this week, to root for the Broncos to win and the Chargers to win. Excuse me, the Chargers and the Buccaneers to win. Because the Broncos could technically, and then if the Buccaneers win, well, you're only 1 game behind Los Angeles, and well, either Denver beats the Chargers and you're even in the loss column with them, assuming you win out, or the Chargers beat the Broncos and you just need one of those teams to lose a game in the final 2 weeks. It just improves your chances quite a bit. But obviously winning this week against Houston is the most important thing. And like I said, if they do win and beat the Texans on the road, I'm actually going to give the Dolphins I'd probably move it up to like a 50% chance to make the postseason. I really would. I really would. If they win this week. But obviously got to win. Obviously have to win. All right, still 100 people watching. Appreciate everyone still hanging out in the live chat. We've got 2 more segments to break down. When this one is all about QB1 at Tua Tagovailoa and how I think he deserves to get more respect from the Dolphins fans and the NFL. So with that being said, let's get into it. Are we going to go intro here or no? Okay. So let's get into the second segment here on Tua Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa deserves to get more respect from Dolphins fans, but also fans around the National Football League, because he has been absolutely phenomenal this season, especially since returning from injured reserve and that concussion he suffered in Week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. Like, since he returned from IR in Week 8 against the Arizona Cardinals, he's playing at an MVP level. And some people might still call back and say, well, the Dolphins have lost 3 games in that span. They lost to the Bills, they lost to the Cardinals, they lost to the Packers, and he wasn't as sharp as he usually is in the cold weather games. Well, he's still playing at a level that, with quarterback play being down this season, well, Tua's has remained the same or at least gotten better. And we'll break down some of those numbers in just a second. But make sure you are following us over on Instagram. At Dolphins Today IG is our handle. We are putting out content on a daily basis over there. And if you want to be covered on the Miami Dolphins outside of YouTube and covered 24/7, make sure you're following us on Instagram at Dolphins Today IG. All right, let's get into, since Tua has returned from IR. It's been 7 games. The Dolphins have a 4-3 record. And let's look at the numbers. I mean, he's completing 76% of his passes over the last 7 games, averaging 282 yards per game. And the part that I love the most about Tua is the fact that he is not turning the ball over. We watched him play the Bills in week 2 and have an abysmal game, even before he got concussed and left that game. He had a terrible game. 3 interceptions, and a couple of them were really, really bad. But I don't know what it is. He is a different ball player in the last 7 weeks. He's been efficient. He's been accurate. His anticipation has been on a different level, and his processing of the field has been generational as well. He's moving through his reads so quickly that he's getting the ball out of his hands so quickly that even this offensive line, who has had its struggles this year, hasn't costed this team football games in the passing game because Tua's getting out of his hands so quickly. And how about this, folks? There could be an NFL record residing in Miami with Tua Tagovailoa. He currently has a 74.5 completion percentage on the season. The single season record is Drew Brees in 2018 with a 74.4 completion percentage. So obviously it's by 0.1%, but he is currently having a season on pace to have the most completion percentage in NFL history. And sure, there will be an asterisk on it because he missed 4 games, but the point still remains. He is completing a lot of passes. The fact that it's basically 3 of 4 right now is ridiculous, especially since he doesn't have a running game working for him right now, which we'll talk about at the end of today's show and how disgusting it is and what needs to be changed there. But Tua is literally on pace of setting an NFL record in completion percentage. That's how good he's been. But let me ask you this. Do you believe Tua is the QB of the future in Miami? I know a lot of Dolphins fans have hated on Tagovailoa. I understand the disappointment at times in big games and cold weathers, but I don't know if there's anyone better out there in the way he's playing. I think I'm typing my Y's, but let me know what you guys are saying down below. And when you look into deeper analytics, more numbers surrounding Tua in the NFL this season, let's look at EPA per play. What does that mean? Expected points added on one specific play. Josh Allen's been on a different level this year. He is QB1. But look who QB2 is. Tua Tagovailoa is adding 0.266 points per play. That is second best in the same conversation as a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy. He is efficient. He is not turning the ball over. He's making the right reads. Like, it's hard for me to continue to say the same thing over and over again, showcase the same numbers, and it's frustrating to see fans in the comment section on Twitter, on social media, continue to bash him and say that the Dolphins can't win long-term with him at QB1, which we'll talk about later in the show as well. But more statistics coming at you. When you look at more advanced numbers, EPA, expected points added, plus completion percentage over expected, which means how many times is he completing a pass more than the average quarterback would be. When you combine those two numbers, he is tied for third in this metric. Jared Goff is 1, Josh Allen is 2, he's tied with Lamar at 3, and Joe Burrow's at 5. So once again, elite quarterback play on display. And it's not like I'm finding some obscure statistics that don't ever get used, like baseball sometimes, to try to make my point mean something, right? I'm not doing that because you see the other quarterbacks named here. There's elite quarterbacks when you look at these stats. And the point is, Tua is playing elite. He's elite quarterback right now. He's a top 10 quarterback in football, and I could make the argument he's closer to be playing at a top 5 level than a top 10 level because that is where he's been. And I truly do believe if he did not get concussed and he just slid on that 4th down play rather than going headfirst to Damar Hamlin, and he played the 4 games against Seattle, Indianapolis, New England, and I'm spacing on the other ones. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. I can't believe I'm forgetting Seattle, New England, Indianapolis, can't remember the 5th game. It's driving me nuts. All right, whatever. I think he would legitimately be at an MVP level right now, and he would be in the MVP conversation. Whew. Man, it's frustrating that he ended up missing 4 games. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We are taking on Texans today in a sub battle this week. We're playing the Houston Texans this Sunday, and we're playing them on YouTube streets as well. So make sure you are subscribed. We're trailing by 11. Let's change that. Hit that sub button so we can take down Texans today. All right, I wanted to run through a little simulation because if I'm going to tell you that I think Tua's a top 5 type of quarterback and how he's playing right now, I think I should put my money where my mouth is and tell y'all where I think quarterbacks stand in the National Football League. This is how I view it right now. When you take into consideration what has happened in the past, what is happening this season, I think this was my top 10 quarterback list without a question. Josh Allen, I think, has taken over QB1. I really think he has. That offense and him has just been absolutely unbelievable. I got Mahomes 2, Burrow 3, Lamar 4, Herbert at 5. He's just been unbelievable accurate. Those wide receivers have let him down in Los Angeles, but I think 2 is at 6. I legitimately do not think another quarterback has played better in the National Football League this season than Tua outside of those 5 on the left. Jalen Hurts, I don't think so, and I don't trust him throwing the football. Kyler Murray's been good, but he turns the ball over a lot. Stafford's had a little bit of a down year. Jordan Love, to me, has played well, but I don't think he is really that good outside of the LaFleur system. C.J. Stroud struggled this year. Aaron Rodgers has gone downhill. Dak Prescott continues to show his limitations. I legitimately think that Tua Tagovailoa has been an unbelievable quarterback this year, and he deserves to be in the conversation for top 5 quarterback in the National Football League. And I will go to bat for Tua in this situation because I don't think there's another quarterback you can name that is better than him right now other than the 5 that I put on the left side there. And I understand the limitations. His arm strength isn't there. His injury history is there. But some of the things he does on an elite level make up for those limitations. The anticipation, the accuracy, the processing of the field, the ability to hit that quick passing game, but also, if he had time in the pocket, hit the deep game as well. Like, the limitations are there. Not saying he's the perfect quarterback, but to me, the positives outweigh the negatives by quite a bit. And when fans want to talk about Tua not being the guy long term, I think you guys need to mellow out. Shout out to Mellow Seltzer. And if you want more on Mellow Seltzer, hit me up on Twitter, social media, Nic_Rohloff. But you're not going to find a better quarterback. Like, is there a quarterback in the draft that will ultimately be better than Tua? No. It's flat out no. In different draft classes, sure. I don't think there's a world where Shurdur Sanders or Cam Ward come into the NFL and become a better quarterback than Tua. I don't. That's how I feel in that regards. And you're not finding a better one on the trade market. You're not finding a better one on free agency. So Tua is going to be the guy here for the Miami Dolphins. And to me, if you just built a more complete roster around him, this team would be money. I know the speed is fun. The Tyreek Hill, the Jalen Wild, the Achane. But you need to have a more physical ball club. You need to have taller, more physical wide receivers on the outside. You need to get better on the interior offensive line at left guard and right guard so you could run the ball more north-south rather than having to go east-west in the run game all the time. You need a more physical running back as well to complement Devon Achane. Achane's been great, but he can't run inside the tackles consistently. He's 180 pounds, and he's only 5'8", 5'9". He's not a big running back. And then that's not even mentioning the defensive side of the ball, which we've seen their struggles and deficiencies in terms of their physicality, missing tackles and secondary. But when you're just looking at the offensive side of things, there's no one doing it better than Tua Tagovailoa. Over the last 4 weeks, number 1 completion percentage, 2nd passing yardage, most touchdowns thrown, and, hey, no interceptions, which is obviously going to be the best in football as well. Like, there is no quarterback playing at a better level than Tua is right now. And how about this shocking stat, folks? Tua has thrown for 300 yards in 3 straight weeks. Patriots, Packers, and then the Jets this Sunday. He joined Dan Marino as the only Dolphins quarterback with 3 consecutive 300-yard games. So when you think about it, 300-yard games, 3 in a row, only quarterbacks who do it. Dan Marino, Tua Tagovailoa. And I know a lot of people are going to be down on Tua, and I know there are a lot of people out there. Trust me, I read the comment section for the most part. He's going to go down as the second-best quarterback in Dolphins history, though. Like, seriously. Assuming Tua's here for 2-3 years plus, he's going to put up numbers. The Dolphins are going to be competitive. He is going to be the second best quarterback in Dolphins history. He just is. And the fact that he's doing this with no rushing game makes it all even more impressive, in my opinion. Because one of the reasons why I was so excited for this Dolphins offense, and I actually made a video about it as well, that the fact that Mike McDaniel was calling more run games and was calling a more balanced game as well, like I think is just so important and was so good to have the sustained offense of Miami. But over the last 5 weeks, that complementary football, that complementary offense has gone away. It has. The Dolphins cannot run the football over the last 5 games. Look at the numbers since the Week 10 game against the Rams. 67, 82, 65, 39, 44. You can't get above 90 rushing yards at all in the last 5 games. You're averaging 59.4 rush yards a game over the last 5 weeks. By the way, in case you didn't know, that's the worst in football. Like, to me, if you're just able to bolster the offensive line on the interior, get a better left guard, get a better right guard, and then get a more physical running back as well to have a more complementary running game that can be consistent and stay long term, this QB will be able to lead you into playoff games. And some may say that you'll look to the struggles in cold weather games. I think we might have to put that blame more on Mike McDaniel, more on the identity of this football team, more than Tua. Because if this team could rely on a running game, could run in between the tackles, can go north-south and be a physical team up in the trenches and with their running backs, then it takes just so much pressure off of Tua. Like, listen, I'm not saying Tua's better than Mahomes. Mahomes hasn't been good statistically this year, but they've been able to win 11, 12 games and have the best record in football. Why? Because they can run the football and they can be physical and they can beat you in the margins. The Dolphins can't beat you in the margins. When was the last time the Dolphins have had a bad game from Tua and still won? I'll hang up and listen. Let me know, though. Do you think that's on me. But sorry, a little confusion here on my end, folks. But either way, I'll do it for today's show. Got a little wound up there at the end. Make sure you hit that sub button and join the channel because we're going to be live for Sunday's game against the Texans, where hopefully Miami's able to get a win. Wow. No. I couldn't remember if we had another weigh-in because, yeah, mind blender. So for the people that watch that VOD and stick around for the entire thing, they're going to be in for a treat at the end there. But good thing is 95% of the people that watch probably don't. So, all right, just checking Twitter. Oh, let me know. Do you guys think Tua is the quarterback of the future? Yeah, I mean, Tua's the most. It is true. It's true. I believe it. Tua is so polarizing. Like, it's not crazy that he's polarizing, but the amount of split fans on if Tua should remain the quarterback of the Dolphins, if he shouldn't, that is a little crazy to me. Because, like, if you can Jack, here's my thing, and this is my thing. I'll have the conversation with the Dolphins fans in general. How do the Dolphins get better at quarterback? If you were one of the people that legitimately think Tua is not the guy at quarterback, how do you get better at that position? And how does that change things long term for you? And for the people in the chat that are typing their nose, there's not a lot of them based off first glance, but let me know. Put down in the chat who would be better and how the Dolphins would get him, and be reasonable.
I mean, my whole thing is look at the stats. And Tua, I mean, you laid it out. Tua's playing at an elite level. You know, he's top 10 quarterback in the league, and that's hard to find. So, you know, look, I mean, we've seen the woes this year. The running game's not great. The offensive line struggles. Like, when Tua's got time and he plays well, he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. I don't think you get rid of a potential top 10 quarterback, you know, ceiling top 5 quarterback in the league.
No, yeah, and Jack, I get people will always point to the health concerns. That is why I think it is up to the most important thing possible to find a viable backup quarterback option. And that is not on Tua. Like, sure, could you be annoyed that Tua has an injury history? Yes. But you can't blame him for the Dolphins' offense being dog shit when he's out for 4 games. You know who that should be blamed to? Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel for employing the backup quarterbacks that they do. Like, if they have a good backup quarterback, like, I'm not saying they would be elite, but the Dolphins went 1-3 in the 4 games Tua was out. They should have went 2-2 at worst. If you have a backup quarterback like a Joe Flacco, a backup quarterback like a Jameis Winston, like, you probably go 2-2. Or just have a offense that isn't so reliant on Tua being the face of it.
This is funny. This is funny to me. So Jeremy in the chat says no. Get a big, fast, accurate quarterback in the draft from the north with a lot of cold weather experience. Okay, name one, Jeremy.
That's my point.
Name
And every Tua hater,
you're asking for like the perfect quarterback for a specific situation. Like, okay, name them then. Is there one in the draft this year that's like that?
No.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you're asking, like, yeah, on paper, that would be great. Of course. Like, I would love for this is just a metaphor. I would love for the Red Sox to go get the top 2 pitchers and Juan Soto and this, that, the other thing. I would love for them to do that. It's not going to happen because it's not viable. Like,
unless the Dolphins are picking top 3, top 5, which they're not, like, where do you, sure, you can hit on a quarterback in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. We've seen other teams do it. Like, I believe the Dolphins should draft a quarterback in this draft. I do. Do I think it should be in the 1st or 2nd rounds? No. But 3rd, 4th round, take a shot. Why not? Try to get a backup quarterback that you can develop, but also sign someone. Like, I don't know. Nobody can bring up a legit name. Like, and I know that everyone say draft one. Well, the Dolphins aren't drafting a quarterback in the 1st round this year. And if they do, that is malpractice because of where the contract situations are. You need win now pieces, but you also have so many holes on the offensive line, so many holes in the secondary, on the defensive line, where a backup or developmental quarterback behind Tua, that would be a waste of a draft pick. I would love, you know who I'd really love, and I do say this? Drew Aller from Penn State. I love Drew Aller. Issue, by the time the draft rolls around, and I don't even know if he'll come into the draft because he might go back to school and try to be QB1 next year. But if he comes out of the draft, I think he'll be QB3 and ultimately might cost you a late 1st round pick, early 2nd round pick. And the Dolphins just have too many holes elsewhere to burn capital there. I was on Jackson Dart for a time there, Finn fan. I'm out on Jackson Dart. I think he stinks. I'm also out on Marcus Mariota. He is a bad quarterback. Bad quarterback. How much is that per year? 27? 27.25. Well, that's my thing. Like, I agree that the Dolphins need to add to this quarterback room and get a long-term backup. And do I think Tua has a chance to be like? Here's the thing. I love Tua. I think he's playing at a high level. Will he ever be a top 5 quarterback in the AFC? I don't know, because if you go back to that top 10 quarterback list I just had, you go 1 through 5 in my list. They were all in the AFC, and I think that's where the issue lies. Like, let's be honest. Because if you went back to the list and you looked at the list, and out of the top 5 quarterbacks and the only 5 quarterbacks I had above Tua in my rankings right now, if 2 of them were AFC and 3 of the NFC, we'd be thinking differently. It's like, oh, Tua is the 3rd best quarterback in the conference. Then we're always going to have a chance. But the issue is that the AFC is loaded with these cyborgs, Mahomes, Lamar, Herbert, Burrow, Josh Allen. That's where it gets people concerned about Tua. But when you look at the grand scheme of the NFL, like, who are you replacing him with? And I don't know if they would even be better in this offense. To me, the biggest thing that needs to be changed, and I will go to my grave saying this, it needs to be more physicality in the running game. You need to have a better run game. You need to have a willingness to lean on that run game and play calling. And you need a backup quarterback. Because to me, the biggest issue with this team is the fact that they get inside the 5, they get inside the 10-yard line. They don't trust themselves to go in between the tackles running the football. 3rd and 1, 3rd and inches, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 4th and 1, 4th and 2. They can't run the football in these situations. It's all on Tua throwing. And that's the issue. Because when you get into the January games, the December games where it's snowing, it's 25, 30 degrees, you need to be able to run the football, control the clock, and dominate the trenches. The Dolphins can't do that. And that's not on Tua. That's not his fault. It's Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer's fault for having the roster and scheme that they do. Yeah, Ryan, I'm not a Najee Harris fan personally, but he proved me wrong this year. He's been great in Pittsburgh. A physical running back like that would be great. The issue is that where do the Dolphins find that? Do they sign someone? They already have Devon Achane, who looks great. They drafted Jalen Wright and spent decent capital on him, so he's going to be your RB2 next year. But is he a guy that you can run in between the trenches? I don't know if he is. So, then you have to have 3 running backs. I love Devon Achane. I do. I think he's been a top 5 running back in football this year. But the truth is, if you want Devon Achane, you need to have a complementary back that is physical, that can run in between the tackles. You don't have that. Your complementary backs are Raheem Mostert, who has struggled this year, and Jalen Wright. But I also think the issues of running in between the tackles falls more on Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg than the running backs. So All right, let me just peruse Twitter one time, and then we'll get into the show. Someone made this point on Twitter, Jack, and I actually am curious. Why does every deal now have to be 6+ years? What happened to the 3-4 year deals? Just got to give it up, man. Red Sox, they could be interested in all these players they want, but when it comes to being in the big dog table, they ain't there. They just ain't the big dogs. They just ain't in the big dog table, man. All right, let's get into the final segment on today's show. We're going to be talking about how the Dolphins may be in big trouble this week against the Texans. And I think they're going to win Miami, but this could be a legit issue for the Dolphins in this game on Sunday. Let's hop into the final show. The Dolphins need to win out, and they start this week against the Houston Texans, and they may be in big trouble in this matchup against Houston. Game is at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Dolphins are 3-point underdogs. Total is 47.5, and I believe there is one reason why the Dolphins may struggle in this matchup. But before we get into that, do you want the Dolphins to get the win and improve to 7-7 and get back to 500? If you do, like the video, hit that like button. Let's get 450 likes to get the good mojo flowing for this game against the Texans on Sunday. So what is causing the big trouble for the Miami Dolphins? Well, it's the fact that Teron Armstead isn't playing. And we are filming this a little bit earlier in the week, so maybe it's been announced officially, maybe it hasn't. But it sounds like he will not be playing against the Texans on Sunday due to that knee injury. He's not going to go on IR, but he just needs some time to let it heal and take time off from football activities. And when you look at the depth chart, that's where things are going to have to start to shuffle. Because Kendall Lamb is already filling in at right tackle for Austin Jackson, who's on IR for the rest of the season. And with that being the case, that means Patrick Paul is going to have to fill in at left tackle. Top 55 pick in the NFL draft back in April. The rookie out of Houston, second rounder, has a lot of potential, and he's going to have to play in this game against the Texans, which is concerning due to the fact, well, who does Houston have at the two edge positions? But first, let's look at Patrick Paul, because he actually has played 2 full games this season. He played in Week 4 against Tennessee when starting and filling in for Teron Armstead. That was the one game that he missed earlier this season before the game actually started. And then he basically started Week 14 against the Jets. And this is how things fared. 54, 52 overall grade. He's clearly better as a pass blocker than a run blocker. Allowed 3 and 2 pressures respectively, 1 sack against the Tennessee Titans. And when you really think about the 2 performances from Paul, I can't confidently go back and say that he was a major issue, especially in the passing game. I know you saw the sack and the pressure allowed, but like when I visually remember what went wrong against the Titans, what went wrong offensively against the Jets, I'm not going to point and say Patrick Paul was the reason why this offensive line struggled and the offense struggled. But he does need to be better in the run game. And I think, frankly, everyone does need to be better in the run game. The Dolphins are averaging 59 rushing yards per game over the last 5. That is worse than football. They have yet to have a game with 100 yards rushing over the last 5 weeks. It's been all on the passing game, which has been a little bit frustrating, and why, to me, this Dolphins offense is struggling at putting the ball in the end zone rather than having to settle for field goals when they get inside the 20. But here's the thing about this game against the Texans on Sunday. The Dolphins simply just will not win if Patrick Paul plays bad against the Texans. They will not win. And the numbers that you saw against the Titans and Jets, and based off what I can remember and what I've watched on tape, like if that happens again on Sunday, that will be fine. But if he plays worse than what the numbers we just showed and has his worst game of his career, which probably wouldn't be the most shocking thing considering he's only played 3 full games, you're going to have issues moving the football against the Texans front 7 that is very good and very, very physical. But let me know, do you have faith in the second-round pick back in April, Patrick Paul? Type Y if you do, type N if you do not. The reason why I am concerned as well, it's because look at who he will have to go up against. The Texans made a pretty big investment into their defensive line. They had Jonathan Grenard leaving for agency. They replaced him with Daniil Hunter on a massive 2-year contract. And remember, just 2 years ago, they traded up to get Will Anderson Jr. in the draft, and he has been Rookie of the Year defensively, and he looks like one of the best young pass rushers in all football. These two have combined for 20 sacks, 28 TFLs. They are good in the run game as well. These two are unbelievable. And having to play what I would argue is the second best defensive edge duo in the NFL with 2 backup offensive tackles and Kendall Lim and Patrick Paul is probably the least ideal thing that you can possibly think of. Like, I hope Armstead's good. He's been the second best offensive tackle in football according to Pro Football Focus this year. He's only allowed 1 sack. He's been only flagged for 1 penalty all year too. Like, Armstead's been so good. And the fact that you aren't going to be able to have him basically stonewall one of Daniil Hunter or Will Anderson Jr. in this matchup is devastating. And if the Dolphins want to get the upset on the road, Paul and Lamb are going to have to put their big boy pants on and play the game of their lives. And we'll have more to discuss here in just a second. But we are sponsored by Game Time, the best ticketing app out there. And if you want to go see the final home Dolphins game, which isn't this week against Houston, but the week after against San Francisco, make sure you get your tickets with Game Time. But if you want to go to any live event in your local area, whether it's a sporting event, comedy show, concert, get Game Time and use them to purchase your tickets. They have the lowest price guaranteed. What does that mean? Well, when you find a ticket potentially that is a lower price on a different service in the same seat, same section, same row, Game Time will actually credit you 110% of the difference. That's how guaranteed their lowest price is. You also get a panoramic view in the app of your seat before you buy. They just make purchasing tickets comfortable, and you never have to worry about a thing. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS when signing up to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, first purchase only. But one more time, download the app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. That link is in the description and comments of today's video. What time is it? It is game time. All right, if you watched all of our content this week, you would have seen our video that we put out on Monday, initially breaking down the Teron Armstead news and what this means for the Dolphins. And we're going to talk about it again here on today's show. The quick game in the passing game will be very important for this Miami Dolphins offense, but it's something that the Dolphins have to rely on quite a bit regardless. And when you think of quarterbacks in the National Football League that get the ball out the quickest, Tua is in that discussion, and the numbers reflect that. Average time to throw this season amongst qualified starters, Tua Tagovailoa is fourth in terms of getting the ball out of his hands, 3.18 seconds. Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, and Kirk Cousins are the only quarterbacks ahead of him. But to me, the reason why these three are ahead of him is because offensive line stinks. Offensive line stinks. Offensive line stinks. These two are more scheme-related, and you can say the offensive line stinks for Tua, but actually the passing numbers and pass blocking numbers would not reflect that. But they script the ball to get out of his hands quicker than anyone in the National Football League. And some may say it's because of all the screens that Mike McDaniel calls and runs. And you could say Tua might be a screen merchant because this season he is fifth in the National Football League in total dropbacks that are screens, which is crazy to think about because this is not the Dolphins' offense. This is just Tua Tagovailoa. And remember, he missed 4 games. So if he did not miss 4 games, I think he would clearly be the number 1 quarterback in total dropbacks that were screens. And that is reflected in the dropback percentage being 18.3%, which is first in the National Football League by quite a wide margin. I believe the next highest dropback percentage of screens is 15% by Jordan Love. And I believe Jared Goff was in the top 5, Baker Mayfield as well. And when you even look more into it, Tua has been phenomenal this year. He's thrown a lot of touchdowns. 6 of them actually come on screen passes. So when you think about the way the Dolphins have ran their offense this season, they have predicated themselves, instead of taking the deep shots to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, everyone asks me, why aren't the Dolphins getting those explosive pass plays like they did last year and the year prior? It's because this scheme and philosophy may have changed to get the ball out of Tua's hands quicker, protect him more, and utilize their playmakers more in the quick screen game more than they did prior. And maybe they just say do that because they don't have as much faith in the offensive line holding up in the time required to hit those deep shots. But the numbers are there. Clearly, they run more screens than anyone else with Tua at quarterback, and it's the reason why that Tua gets the ball out of his hands so quickly. But when you talk about the quick game, I think you also have to talk about the tight end, because the tight end is a quarterback's best friend in terms of getting the ball out of his hands quickly over the middle of the field within 5-7 yards of the line of scrimmage when he's feeling pressured. Drop it down to the tight end. But Jonnu Smith is so good in the yak game that you can run pop passes to him, end arounds, screens. And you saw against the Jets in overtime, Jonnu Smith didn't have a catch in regulation. But in overtime, he had 3 catches, 44 yards, and the game-winning 10-yard touchdown. But 2 of those catches went for 34 yards, and both of those were screens. And over the last 4 games, Jonnu Smith has 28 receptions, 345 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I would expect Jonnu Smith to be another focal point of this Dolphins offense, especially with the inability to probably protect Tua for a deep amount of time in the pocket, going up against Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. Expect the quick game. Expect Jonnu Smith to be heavily involved, which may actually be a good thing for the Miami Dolphins. But before we do that, I do want to show Jonnu some love because he was absolutely stonewalled, and then out of nowhere, 3 catches, 44 yards, and the game-winning 10-yard grab to beat the Jets and end their season. So Jonnu Smith some love by spamming his jersey number down in the comment section. Drop those 9s. The reason why I think Jonnu Smith is going to be even more involved than he has been potentially over the last 4 weeks, where he's got over the 100-yard mark twice and has 4 touchdowns in 4 games, is because the Houston Texans defense could be one of their weaknesses. And for the entire season, it has been a strong point, but it's kind of having a little chink in the armor for the Texans defense. Over the last 4 weeks, Houston has allowed 20 receptions, 234 yards, and 1 touchdown against tight ends. You saw Chigakonkwo go off against the Texans from Tennessee. You saw Evan Ingram in Jacksonville have a good game against the Texans defense. So I think Jonnu Smith can have a good game against Houston. But when you also factor in the fact that they will be without their top linebacker, Azeez Al-Shaair, because of his suspension, and they might have to rely on Christian Harris for the first time this season, who has not played a game this year. So first game action of the season, going up against Jonnu Smith. I'm excited to see what happens for this Dolphins offense, who is going to have to change the way they think with potentially Armstead being out, going up against this tough defensive front, but also the way they attack these safeties, these linebackers over the middle of the field, because talking with Texans Today host Jeremy Chuggs here at Chat Sports, his main concern is the quick passing game, because he thinks they can hold up in coverage long enough for to get pressure. But he even is scared of the speed, the athleticism, and the ability to get out in open space with Waddle, Achane, Jonnu, Tyreek, and that's the thing he's most concerned about. So I'm excited to see the chess match between Mike McDaniel, D'Amico Ryans, and company in this heavily anticipated game, which has a lot of implications. Texans couldn't clinch a playoff spot this week. Miami needs to win out to have a chance to make the playoffs. It's going to be a fun atmosphere in Houston, and we'll be live for that game on Sunday. So make sure you hit that sub button. Join us for our Week 15 watch party. We're going to have a ton of fun and hopefully see the Dolphins get to 7-7. Trade. That's pretty random. That's former Met legend who's in the trade for Lindor. Ugh. Stove is starting to heat up now, Jack. I said stove is starting to heat up now. Is Tanner Scott a free agent? That trade really makes no sense for the Guardians. Why would they trade him? He's their starting second baseman. Yeah, that's weird. Stove is hot though now. We jinxed it in a good way. I don't care about the Red Sox. All right. Is anyone got anything to say? We'll stay live for a minute. Super chat. Get on the show. If not, we'll sign off and see everyone live on Sunday. Videos every day in between now and then. My guy Poe's in the chat. What's up, Poe? You guys are going to be irrelevant for the next decade. I'm just telling you how it is. I think you'd rather get told how it is than someone fake nice. Like, you guys are just going to be third or fourth in that division every year. Every year. Now, the Blue Jays might blow up soon. So, who knows on that end. But Yankees, Orioles, clearly going to be better in the future. Who's the fifth team? I'm spacing. The Rays. Yeah, they're so irrelevant, too. You guys are going to be third or fourth forever. And then the Rays and Blue Jays will flip between 4 and 5. Yeah, you guys might have a couple of years where you're fourth. Christopher, unclear, but that's why you subscribe to the channel, Christopher, because if we get information about Bradley Chubb playing this week, we will drop a video and have you covered. I think it's likely that he plays. It will be on a pitch count in all likelihood, but since he has had his 21-day practice window open, and it would be probably about 8 or 9, 10 days worth of practice window being open, I would be more inclined to say he does play, but I'm not going to say for sure Bradley Chubb will play. But if it is announced he will play, we will have that information for you. Likely would be announced either tomorrow in Mike McDaniel's presser or Thursday. And if it's not announced then, we'll have to wait for the injury reports on Friday and Saturday. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Appreciate everyone tuning in and hanging out with us on this fine Tuesday afternoon. Dolphins, Texans this upcoming Sunday, it is going to be a very fun game, a very tough game, a game that must be won by Miami. Whew. Gonna be stressing about it all week long. All right, see you then. Peace out.